everyone and welcome back to DCS World and another mini guide video on two new really important assets that have recently been added to DCS World and to the Contention Servers, and that is the IRIS-T and Pantsir anti-missile systems. Now, I'm not going to go into a full in-depth guide here, mostly because everything is still going to change a bit in the future, mostly because the CTLD system as a whole is going to be overhauled pretty soon. So I'm not really going to focus on how to set these up. Mostly I'm going to be focusing on what you need to know as a player when you're facing these things. So first of all, we have the IRIS-T. That is a German-made medium-range surface-to-air missile system. It is made of three types of units. We have a search and track radar, a C2 command and control site, and a launcher unit, and normally there are multiple launchers per IRIS site. And all in all, this is a very, very dangerous system, because really what it combines is a really good search and track radar, a pretty long range missile that is very, very maneuverable, and then on top of that, an IR seeker on the missile that lets it be a fire and forget weapon. So the radar on this is capable of looking out to about 250 kilometers, which is a huge distance. It is capable of searching and keeping track of multiple different targets at the same time, and so basically lines up anything that it can detect. The missiles themselves are much shorter range, 40 kilometers, about 21 nautical miles range. However, they are very, very maneuverable. And so what the system will do is detect any incoming targets, line them up. As soon as they enter that engagement range, the missiles will open up. And there are a lot of missiles. Each launcher is capable of firing off a total of 8 missiles. And as I said, there's normally multiple launchers per setup, and so this can put out a lot of fire. And what it will essentially do is queue up targets, fire one missile at each threat as they cross the barrier. If a missile misses, then it will simply launch another one. Now, importantly, although this is being guided by a radar system for the actual initial launch, the missile itself will just head towards the target and then use an inbuilt IR sensor to home in on the target. And what this means from the point of view of an aircraft in the air is that you will get a brief track and then a brief launch warning, and then the target will drop off. You'll stop getting RWR emissions, but the missile is still on this way. And combine that with a smokeless missile, and you've got something really, really dangerous. On top of that, this missile is maneuverable enough and sensitive enough that it absolutely will track other missiles. This is very important for HARM missiles. It is quite happy to track and take those down. Similarly, this will track other missiles in the air. I've seen it open fire on Fox 2 missiles as target of opportunities. So all in all, not only is this a difficult site to be flying near, but it's also very, very difficult to take out. A single player on their own can very easily just waste harms on this, particularly if you only fire 1 or 2 harms at a long range. The system will queue them up, it will start firing missiles, and sooner or later those missiles will hit home. And I know I've seen players getting frustrated that they have launched a lot of missiles at this thing and it remains standing. So then the big question is, well, how do you go about taking it on? And really what you're trying to do is either surprise the system or overwhelm the system, or ideally both. You really don't want to be launching at long range. Your harms are nice standoff weapons, but the problem is that if you're giving the radar a lot of time to detect this, you're giving it a lot of launches that it can have at your missile. So the closer the range is that you are able to get before firing off your missiles, then the more chance those missiles have of hitting home. What's absolutely ideal is if you can terrain mask up until the last moment. I've had a lot of success with this. Then on top of that, you want to launch as many missiles as you possibly can at the target. I've had really good success launching missiles in sets of 4. It does seem rather overkill, and it would be for many other systems, but for this one it is worth it. If you take out that search and track radar, the rest of the site goes inoperative. Although they are IR seeking heads, there's no capability of the launcher alone to actually detect a target to launch at. So fire off all 4 of your harms, or ideally work in groups. If many of you fire harms at the target all at once, you can absolutely overwhelm this. The system's pretty accurate, but it absolutely has its limits. Then last thing to bear in mind is that if this is not a base object, but if this has been put down by a player with CTLD, do bear in mind that although taking out the radar will disable the site temporarily, all they need to do is repair that, and then all of a sudden the system is back online. So it is a very good idea that after you've taken out the radar, head back in and try and finish these off. I've got other guides previously of good ways of doing that. So then next up is the SA-22 Pantsir, which we have the S1 version of now. And this system is quite different in a number of ways. This is more like the love child of a Tunguska and a Tor, taking kind of the best features of the SA-19 and SA-15 and smashing them together. It is a single unit, not a dispersed group, so it itself is its own tracking radar. It is equipped with 12 incredibly manoeuvrable but very short-range infrared missiles, and also has a pair of 30mm rapid-fire cannons. Now, the first thing to note here is this is a much shorter range system. It's got about half the range of 20 kilometers launch range, and its radar is also a lot more short range. It's 36 kilometers of radar range. And so this is much more of a point defense system, much more of a localized system. However, just as with the previous system, this one is capable of tracking both aircraft and missiles, and it is capable of firing the Fox 2 missiles, and so it is fire and forget. Now, the big strength here are those missiles. They are insanely maneuverable. Watching them maneuver is quite scary. They will track anything, even something desperately trying to maneuver. Very, very hard to avoid these once they've been launched on you. Another thing that makes this particularly a threat is the fact that you don't get any launch warning whatsoever. You will get a track RWR warning, but it never locks you. It's just using that as a tracking target. And so you don't know that there is a missile on the way, and even once the launcher is dead, the missile's quite happy to continue tracking you. So the main thing there is be very, very careful. If you get an SA-22 pinging you on the radar, assume you've been launched on. And once again, although it is a radar track, the actual missile itself is infrared, and so you're wanting to be using flares there and normal, doing your best to avoid the missile, but it's very, very difficult. In terms of it being used as a point defense weapon, which is really what it's designed for, it has some disadvantages compared to the IRIS system that we looked at previously, notably because it is just a single launcher and radar, and it has significantly shorter range. It's not going to get off as many missiles. There is a bit of a delay between acquiring one missile, launching, and then being able to acquire and launch on a second missile. And because it only has 22 kilometers of range, that's not a lot for it to play around with here. However, the missiles themselves are much more accurate in terms of per missile actually being able to hit. These will generally hit, and if all else fails, it does have those 30mm as a backup, which it will spray, and it has a horrendous rate of fire. Horrendously huge rate of fire, that is. In particular, I found this very effective at taking down incoming Mavericks. Maverick missiles are really quite slow, particularly towards the end of their launch, and so they make perfect targets. This can absolutely take out a large number of Mavericks all at once, all well before they get to a target, and so it's kind of ideal at defeating Blue 4 Maverick tactics. So then, how do you actually go about taking this thing on? Well, I've had numerous different ways of getting success with this. One is just simple saturation attack. You launch 4 harms in short order at this thing. They are likely one is going to get through just because of its decreased range. You can also find quite a lot of luck with just launching 1 or 2 harms if you yourself enter the engagement range. The TOR very much prioritizes aircraft threats over missiles, so if you are entering that engagement threat, it will focus on you. It will certainly still fire at your missiles, but it will put a lot more focus and attention on you. So what you can do is just nip into range, fire off the missiles just at its engagement range, and then immediately turn. You want to be immediately turning because your best bet of survival is to outrange the missile that is launched after you. And then by the time you've recovered, those 1 or 2 missiles you've launched probably have a good shot at hitting. Another tactic that I've found works quite well at this is using ultra low level. The system doesn't seem very good at tracking targets at low altitudes, particularly missiles at low altitudes. So you can actually get quite far within its engagement range if you are hugging the ground and fire off a harm. Well, one thing to be careful of here is that 20 kilometers range, if you're launching a harm on the deck, then it can very easily run out of energy before it hits the target. So you probably do want to pierce the engagement range by quite a bit, launch closer to 15-10 kilometers from the target, at which point your harm should have enough energy. And launching under these circumstances, I've tried this a few times, and if the missile system launches at all, it tends not to be able to track. It'll tend to try and fire a few rounds of the 30mm, but that tends not to be too accurate. And again, because you're piercing the range, the missile system will mostly be focusing on you. Of course, this does put you at a fair bit of risk, but with this tactic I have managed to take these out with a single harm missile, and so it is perfectly possible. One final thing to add is there is something you have to bear in mind with these systems. Both of them will target small missiles and rockets. That includes rockets fired from planes and from MLRS systems. And this is kind of a double-edged sword. It does mean that both the IRIS and the Pantsir can both provide defences from those pesky bombardments. But on the other side, that means it is really easy to overwhelm them by purposely putting in a lot of missiles into their engagement area. You don't have to be firing harms. You can get away with firing rockets and then going in with your real munitions. Or equally, you can drop down an MLRS system and bombard the base while you are going in. Both of these will keep these systems busy while you go in and actually take out the vital targets. So yeah, that is my overview of these brand new toys that we get to play around with. They are both very interesting, very useful, and filling niches that weren't there before, especially for Blue 4 with the IRIS system. Having that point defense capability is now really good, helps Blue 4 match what the TOR could do. And this new Pantsir system is kind of a TOR on steroids. It is very, very good at this point defense, particularly good at dealing with incoming Mavericks. So do let me know down below what you've thought of these systems as you've come across them. Have you got any favourite tactics with dealing with them? And there certainly will be guides coming up in the future for helping employ these. I'm probably going to wait until after the CTLD update comes through though, because that will be shaking up a lot of things. And both of these systems fit in really nicely with the whole integrated defense network system that is going to be coming with that. So yep, any questions, leave them down below. Otherwise, I hope to catch you in a future video. Until then, remember to be kind to yourselves and everyone else. Cheers.